And the first one I want to talk about is 2016 Moondog. It has a very beautiful label. I'm not sure how well you can see it, sort of right there. And then you have these sort of each of the labels has these sort of little symbol related to it. It's, the moon right here. This is a Pinot Noir based wine. So it's like Pinot Noir, many different clones, and Pinot Gris. That's from, it's like a 3/4 of an acre parcel on an amphitheater on the lower part of the Central Hill. This is the part of the farm where all the wines are named after light effects. And so each of like 16 different parcels are like half an acre to an acre, but they sit within these larger fields that are really 3 to 5 acres in size. And all those fields have sort of a principle that sort of guides how we name the wines and how we relate to the parcel in terms of communication. And we've sort of focused on aspects of the site that are dear to us and made an impression on us, and a sort of way to explore that identity. And so this part of the site is all about light effects. And so the weather, 22 miles from the summit of Mount Hood and really the center of the Hood River Valley on this south-facing slope looking down at the Hood River. And it's a place of like very changeable weather because of the location on the mountain. So storms basically come in from the ocean and they hit Mount Hood and they break upon the mountain. And they move around in either east or west. And they can sort of follow the west hills, which are over there, the east hills that are on the other side, where now the moon is rising above a bank of very beautiful clouds. It's catching the last light of the sun. But it means that clouds are moving swiftly around the site. We never get sort of socked in by clouds, but it's also never without sort of weather phenomena. And what that means is that we get tons of rainbows and halos and all these interesting phenomena. So Moondog is basically named after a halo that occurs under the moonlight. And the site is most heavily influenced by the Hood River, which is sort of rushing below us. And the effect of the river really only impacts the top half of the vineyard. And so basically we have all the bottom half of the vineyard ripens about 2 weeks later than the top half. And we've sort of focused on things that where we really want to preserve sort of the delicacy of like fragrance and sort of a lot of textural detail, where on the bottom of the site we plant those things. On the top of the site we focus on things that need more ripening power, or we really want to deliver sort of more power and concentration and intensity. And so Moondog's on that bottom half because it's Pinot Noir and because we really want to preserve all the sort of fine gradations of like nuance and detail. And this is, along with Cornus, which is adjacent to it, it's the last of the Pinot-based parcels on the farm here that we pick. And it always takes the longest to unfold. And so this spent, it's funny, I think we're known for the field blends and for doing a lot of crazy things, but we also make a fair amount of Pinot Noir, like almost 700 cases each year, which to us feels like a lot. And not just from this site, but from other sites, from Atavis and this vineyard you'll talk about later called Elder, from Oak Ridge. So we make a lot of Pinot Noir, and it's a super special, great variety to work with because it was planted, it's from the early Middle Ages. It's one of the oldest grape varieties we know, and it's very peculiar. It's, almost halfway between white and red. It doesn't have the full set of flavor precursors that you see in all red wines, and it allows the grape variety to do all these sort of aromatic and textural acrobatics that are really possible from, say, grape varieties like, Cabernet or Grenache, or really anything else. Like, it's very peculiar. I mean, Nebbiolo is probably the closest thing in terms of, being able to express itself with so much articulacy, at least for a red grape. And so I get just really, really excited about it, even though, it feels like a normal thing. It's really not. It's really a strange grape. It's really like sort of a wonderfully esoteric and exotic thing to be able to work with, and we're also blessed that this site is a pretty magical place for it, and we work really traditionally, which I think is another thing that I don't think a lot of people would associate with us, but our practices are really similar to way, you know, old school winemakers who have been working Côte Rôtie and Burgundy really before the Industrial Revolution. And you can look at these like medieval tapestries of how they make wine in Burgundy in the Middle Ages. It looks a lot like our crush pad. And so we're fermenting in open top wooden vats, whole cluster, without destemming. The wine is moved into the barrel with buckets, which you see in these pictures. You see these wooden buckets. You know, they didn't have pumps back then, right? And so you see these wooden buckets moving the wine, you know, from the press, the fermenter, into the barrel. That's how we do it. And we tread by foot, right? So we, you know, it depends on the fermenter. We don't do things by rote or by routine. And so with Pinot Noir, we're sort of feeling the fermenter, you know, trying to getting in there, like tasting it, smelling it, feeling the energy of the fermentation. Some days we might not give it a punch, or not a punch down, a pigeage, a foot tread. Like we tread by foot. Like we don't use a punch down device. We don't use pumps to do pump overs. But we'll really feel out when we want to be in the fermenter. You know, we might not start treading for 2 weeks. We might do it the first day. But it ends up being a relatively like traditional process. And with this wine, it was tread by foot, whole cluster in the fermenter, no destemming, no sorting, because we feel like that damages the grapes to a certain degree, for about 3 weeks. So again, pretty traditional period of time and we feel like the slightly longer maceration when it's available to us, it helps develop these flavors that are beyond fruit, which is always what we're looking for in the wine. We don't want to make fruity wines. We want to make wines that are transformative and transcendent and moved. And this is like a really prime example of it. And so it's this wine that unfolded really slowly over 2 years in older 350-liter thick stave casks, 2 of them, just 2. So 700 liters, produce a little bit less than that. And it's a wine that is very much about flowers and spice and textural nuance. It's very much a wine that sort of slowly reveals itself to you. It doesn't give itself all up at once. And I think it has a very, very long life ahead of it. So it's 2016, it's the current release. So 2 years in barrel, bottled by gravity by hand, then we left it in bottle for 2 years because it wasn't showing itself. And it's magnificent now, but just beginning to unwind. And so I think that's the other thing that people often, I think, don't understand about our wines is that they're built to age, they're meant to age. And even in the wines that are like the most playful for us, they often take, you know, I think 5 years to really, from the vintage, to even begin to be sort of drinkable or approachable. And so, it's the first wines where I felt like we really, working with Pinot Noir in this place in the most resonant way that we can, and there have been a bunch of amazing wines that sort of followed it, but I think this is the wine that sort of most shows sort of the place that we're at with Pinot Noir. And we're going to have 2 other wines based on Pinot Noir sort of here, and so sort of good to sort of set the stage. Our process is the same, more or less, just with the whole cluster and foot treading, regardless of the site. We don't sort of vary from that. It's really like the little nuances within the site, like when we're going to press, when we do pigeage, how long it's in barrel. Those sort of things are more the things. And really it's the site like that determines style. Everyone says that, but it's the work that we do in the vineyard has a much larger impact on the wine here than what's sort of happening in the cellar.